into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne. Right along here with Craig Simpson tonight, sitting in for Ransom Godwin. We are going to be talking about all things changing on this beautiful blue planet. Take a breath to be thankful that you're alive and enjoying the moments, even though there seems to be chaos around us. Craig Simpson tonight, radiantcreators.com. We've done a couple podcasts together before, full of new and intriguing ideas. Now, as we see Bill Gates and his greasy palms now wants to create new lab-grown fat to add into the lab-grown food to give it that more supple taste on the tongue so you can actually believe that it's a real meat. So they're going to combine now oils grown on bacteria with the lab-grown meats, and they hope they can come out with a winner chicken dinner on it. Also, Craig had sent me a real interesting article here, actually a video about 9,000 years in the past, a Stonehenge found under Lake Michigan. We're going to talk a little bit about the economy, these planned changes for our food supply, the farmer strike, and also a little bit of ancient history tonight. It's going to be a winding together of what is and what can be expected as we move forward into the rest of the year. Craig, I see you joined me, so thanks for popping on here. Floor is yours. Are you on mute? I don't really hear you. Hey, Craig. Okay, we seem to have some audio issues here. I was just telling everybody we're going to try to talk about the ancient history. Now we got it going on. Yeah, click off that mute button and the floor is yours. Thanks for everybody joining in here on the broadcast. It seems we had a problem with the mic setup and the connection here. So, Craig, back at you, man. Let me see here. All right, so it seems that we are having a problem here getting Craig on the line. Craig, when you come in, turn off your mute, and I see you connected already. So I'm just going to continue with the show here. I thought that our speakers were off, and I'm broadcasting from Asia right now, trying to reconnect back in here. So let me get on to the greasy planet notes for us. Gates notes, you better believe it. Oh, the headline says it all. Greasy, a good for the planet. It doesn't even, greasy and good for the planet. Now, Gates goes on and says, I love cheeseburgers. They're my favorite. Oil sizzles and brings the ideal sandwich together. The secret ingredient is animal fat. And again, for us out here in the survival, staying alive through the ages community, we've always relied on fats to keep us going. Whether it's coconut oil or lard or any kind of fat that you might need, olive oil, it gives it that super yummy flavor in the mouth. And that juiciness feel right now cannot be replicated with lab-grown meats because even though they have some fat that they put in, it's like artificial margarine or something. And they can't quite get the taste to, I guess, mixed together to give you that juiciness in the mouth feel. Now, unfortunately, it's a disaster for the climate. And they're trying to say that oil production in terms of oil fats and fats from animals and plants makes up 7% of all the emissions on the planet. But I had a question then, Billy. How much of the emissions on the planet are from the war machine currently? And also belching ships that have to run around the Cape of Good Hope. Do you think we could get an assessment of percentages on that and then the private jets that are flown around the world? I know it only makes 7% of all the airline traffic in the world, your private jet travel, but still you're putting it in the atmosphere. And this whole thing about, carbon offset credits where you can still put it in the atmosphere even though it's an existential threat, but then you can buy a credit somewhere where some dude in a rainforest will replant another plant. This is the absurdity of the world we live in. Such an existential threat, another gram that goes up, it's going to kill us. But wait, we'll put it up in our private airplanes and we'll just buy some credits from some dude in a third world country. And everything, we can sleep soundly at night. And the tooth fairy will still give us quarters under our pillow. It's all good. So here's the thing, the nutrient-dense foods that we crave. Now, he talks about a company called Savor, like savor the food, S-A-V-O-R, which he's invested in. No, Craig, you can jump in on the conversation, man. Let me just finish this here. The Savor they're trying to combine carbon and hydrogen atoms artificially to make long chain carbon hydrogen chains that eventually turn into what we know as fats or animal fats. So this is all going to be done in a factory, no less. What they're trying to do is lab create fat molecules like the ones we get from milk, cheese, beef, and vegetable oil. And this process doesn't release any greenhouse gases, except for those driving to the factory in their cars, and then the operations costs and the electricity and the machinery and all the machinery that was produced in a factory that uses the electricity to produce the machinery. And then we have to move it from the factory to the ultimate buyer, who needs to drive a car to come to the supermarket to come and buy it. Except for that, there's no greenhouse gases in it at all. None. Tastes good, tastes like the real thing, because chemically it is. It is. I've tasted Savor's products and I couldn't believe it. These animal fats. Again, would you feel comfortable? Margarine, for those of you out there, is only one chemical away. I mean, one chemical bond away, like literally one molecule connected to that chain away from being plastic. And I will ask any scientists out there, any molecular scientist, any chemist, please validate the truth on this. I've seen it before. Look, it's one chemical bond away from being plastic. Now, I don't know if that's something I want to put in my body. Again, if you're just going to chemically smash together a bunch of carbon and hydrocarbon chains together to make a molecule of animal fat, is it really the real deal? Or is it just like margarine, one chemical bond away from being plastic or crude oil? Like, that's not something we would normally want to drink, is a barrel of crude oil. But it sounds like this thing here, just for those of you, just a quick 101 on hydrocarbons, like in terms of gasoline and diesel and that black tar that you see on the streets, otherwise known as asphalt. That's just different chains of the same chemicals of the carbons and the hydrocarbons put together. Longer chains are that really dense, heavy, bitumen type of stuff. The very short chains are what we call gases, because they float. The shorter the chain, the lighter the substance. So if we come down into, obviously, diesels and oil, slightly different chain than gasoline, which is a slightly shorter one, because the combustibility and evaporability, or how it evaporates, is different than an oil-based. So the oil-based ones, actually, the oil in the diesel is a longer chain. So what Gates is trying to do is saying they're going to use the exact same hydrocarbon, carbon chains that are in what we consider oil, and try to splash those together, and that's it. Now, I'm going to need a little help here. Ransom, are you hearing me out there? Are you hearing me out there? Because it seems that we're having some broadcast problem here where it says we're both are gone, but can you hear me? Because Freedom Slips or Revolution Radio is using a device that could not record or broadcast this call. So you know what, Craig, I'm going to hang up and find out what's going on here. I'm going to have to start the show again. Excuse us. Hold on, please. Oh, wait, Ransom's typing back. Yes, he can hear me. So, Craig, I don't know. I'm going to blast you off the call here and add you to come in. I'm going to remove you from the call. I'm going to call you again. Kicked you out. It even says kicked you out of the call. I'm going to add you back in. Need to add one more participant here if we can. Craig, let me jump back in on you here. I want to add you in on the call. Let's see what's going on. Craig, hop on, man. I hope you can hear us. And it's taken a while to reconnect here. I don't know what is up. Is there sunspots today? Is there some kind of solar wind interference with perceived satellites or something like this? Not sure. But while we wait to connect back to Craig here from Radiant Creators, I know y'all are going to want to hear what he has to say. Back to Bill Gates's thing. Now, the most common oil, I did not know this, used in the world's production of foods is palm oil. And the reason it is because it stays stable at room temperature, not a liquid at room temperature. It's a solid. So then they can put it in all kind of products, and it's a preservative as well by itself. So when they add it to the food, it stays stable. So the whatever consistency they had in that is perfect. And then also it doesn't melt into a liquid. And then also it preserves the food at the same time. Now they're saying this is bad for biodiversity, which I'll agree with. I've been to some palm oil plantations in Indonesia and in Myanmar. And as far as you can see, is off the horizon, as far as things stretch, it is just one giant sea of the exact same species of tree. Now, I get that. I get that. You know, we don't want to be destroying the environment all over the place. But let me try to bring Craig back again here. Again, the live things that happen on air. So he's saying, you know, the palm oil is hard to replace. This is Bill Gates. So what they want to do is try to keep that semi-solid, creamy, easily spreadable consistency and make it from a lab-grown bacteria. And I'm thinking that's not going to be too tasty, I don't think. That's just me. But, you know, then there's another company called C16 Biosciences, but that's very close to C60, which is carbon 60. So if I'm going to say it on the air for you, C16, C60, and what if I'm sloppy and I say C16, C60, you know, then we're talking about a completely, you know, they're trying to overlap and overlay, I do believe, on the naming of the product to try to get you convinced that it's already associated with like C60 or something, which is interesting. The way they're trying to do the whole palm oil thing here to switch over because they understand there's lab-grown meats are a no-go. Nobody's buying it. Nobody wants Impossible meat. Nobody wants it because as close as they can get it, it still isn't the real thing enough to where consumers like, no, don't want to buy it. So now their next best thing is to create 2 lab-grown hydrocarbon chained fake oils to add into the lab-grown meat to try to give you this consistency that comes from regular animal fats. Will it work, Craig? I don't know, man. Sounds like a far-fetched science fiction bent on acid kind of thing that may or may not work in the kaleidoscope, but who knows, man? Any ideas are possible. So welcome. Glad you can join us here, and we got the tech figured out, and finally the comms are up. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad the comms issues weren't on my end, or maybe they were, but anyway, somehow we're all connected. I was wondering what was happening there for a little bit. Well, now fake meat is strange because there is a such thing as just a lot of money and a lot of interest wanting you to do something, and if they put it out there and say it's great and it saves the planet and you're a good person if you eat it or do it or think it, you know, once in a while they can sway public opinion. But I've watched the Beyond Meat at many stores, from just the generic normie grocery store to, you know, Whole Foods to you name it. And as far as I can tell, it really just sits there. I have not really ever seen anybody buy it or eat it. So it's a strange phenomenon. I mean, I think that the whole fake meat and making fake meat meatier by making it even less healthy with strange, perverse, you know, Frankenstein oils they want to create to put in it to make it taste like meat. You know, it's hard to get a barometer sometimes on what, you know, people are thinking out there, because I don't know anybody who's really ever eaten Beyond Meat. Maybe I hang out with a bit of a, I don't know, a Ted Nugent kind of crowd or something, but I mean, but nobody I know really has had any interest in it. We mostly have pointed at it and made fun of it in the store and looked at the strange colors that it was, and just, you know, if you read the ingredients, I think you have to secretly hate yourself, because anybody with any knowledge of just even a cursory knowledge of what you shouldn't eat, I mean, it's pretty much like it's it's non-organic, soy protein. So it's GMO oil, soy protein. It's, canola oil rich. It's got, pretty much every bad thing that you shouldn't be eating is in it. And so I don't know. I just have not seen anybody take an interest in it. And it kind of, gives me hope because we are living in a psyop world right now beyond all comprehension. And I think that, Beyond Meat has definitely been one of them. And so far, even in the cities where you think people would be buying it, they're not. So that's good to see. On just to have fun, talking about psyops. One of the people were talking about so much the last week. Well, since it was Super Bowl, weekend, was the way I'd phrase it is I'm noticing people get more and more psyop aware. Like psyops now are they're, I don't want to use the word normie again, but they're like normie speak. They're like people. It's kind of left the barn of the conspiracy theorist crazy people, like myself. And now it's mainstream. And so something that just got so much, visibility and traction was the whole Super Bowl and Taylor Swift and her guy, whoever the guy is. He's on the team, I guess, or something. But anyway, it was a couple months ago, you start seeing her face everywhere, and I was like thinking, man, and what I liked was how people who were just, like I say, normies, they were kind of picking up on it too. We're like, do you know a Taylor Swift song? I don't know. There's plenty of female vocalists that I'm not into, but I would at least know something about their music. Like if you think about Tina Turner, you can think of a song. Think about Madonna, you probably know 500 of her songs at least. You can at least you would recognize them. Cyndi Lauper, how about Joan Jett? I love rock and roll, right? Do you know any Taylor Swift songs? Like, I really don't. I'm not sure she exists. So this person I've never heard of, with strange looking bangs, you can't walk through a magazine store or a supermarket without seeing this girl. And then her guy and her at the Super Bowl. And then, like 3 days, I guess right before there was a recent shooting, I guess at the Super Bowl, like parade or something like that for the Giants, I think it was. They were already coming out for gun control. I guess it was going to be like one of their platforms. Oh, people really shouldn't have so many guns, or it should be harder to get guns or something like that. And so you realize, oh my gosh. So everybody was kind of looking for the psyop. They were like, what? They're like, it doesn't make sense that this girl's in everybody's face and this relationship, this weird thing. And it's kind of like, it sort of relates to like the Barbie movie. You're like, this weird, I know this may sound very vain. I'm usually not quite this silly, but it's just that nobody seemed to really fall for it. I guess some people did, but it was just weird. It was so obvious, and I think the psyops, they're losing their knack at really doing them anymore, because when you're psyop to push gun control, which is definitely a WEF style, UN small arms treaties, it's just the empire doesn't like an armed America at all. And then when you realize, wow, so this whole psyop, we were thinking it was going to be something a little bit more grand, but this big psyop, who knows how much it cost, pushing this chick out there for everybody to see. And it's just this little, it's going to be gun control, And so you start wondering, well, that shooting, I don't think they've even really found the two people, or I guess they did get the two people that were shooting up the crowd or whatever. But I noticed that I think psyops are just they've lost their knack at controlling the masses. And I think that you look at Beyond Meat, they just didn't nail that one. You look at Taylor Swift and gun control, they just didn't nail it. And they're spending a lot of money, and they're just not getting a grip on people like they used to. So I guess that's my thought on that.
Oh, my friend, that's why we have the misinformation, disinformation year 2024.
Yes.
They can start pulling back on any kind of independent thought. Now, let me tell you about I had a strange thing happen today with my podcast. So Ransom Godwin and myself last week, we talked about the introduction of Pleistocene animals and the rewilding of Europe, and that they were going to have to remove people off the lands, including North America, and put them into megacities. Now, I got slapped with a climate change, banner under my video. Now, that's no big deal. That happens a lot. But the thing was, I was unable to share the link from the YouTube video into any of my feeds. It wouldn't catch. So I had to put it into a different browser. And then when you put it into a different browser, obviously like Brave or something, it will add a little bit of code on the end there and then add equals and something to where the source came from. And once I grabbed that super long code, then I put it in, and sure enough, it's shared. So it's a little crazy for me that even now videos talking about rewilding Pleistocene animals back into Europe, and the reason that farmers are having their lands confiscated because of kind of ridiculous agendas out there and higher taxes and the flooding of Europe with European grains and just trying to remove everybody off the land, confiscate farms to rewild areas. And unable to share that podcast episode, which is super, I think that they're finally in full swing of, because I kept hearing people say, oh, David, I can't share your post on Facebook, or I can't post it, or I can't, put a link in there. It won't work. And, I've just experienced the same thing, but from the source, me as the creator of the source of the video, of my own video, unable to share that link from my own created, media there, which is baffling. So I think it's gone into kind of a new phase to try to control what is being talked about, what is being said. I mean, if you look out there, how much pushback is there? They really don't want you talking about the true reasons why the farmers are protesting across Europe. Yeah, there's dumped grain from Ukraine. That's one thing. But the amount of taxes, and now they have a new nitrogen runoff penalty where they map a farmer's land using LIDAR and different GIS layering to see where, if they apply to, like, say, 5 acres and they put nitrogen out and they're growing corn, for example, if it rains and it runoffs into a farm or other field or into a stream or something, they can track that back, and then they fine the farmer to the point where it almost makes their operating costs impossible. Then they have the nitrogen taxes, the CO2 tax, the methane tax. They have to pay for the rubber tires in advance to dispose of them at purchase. The farm gate, they're now bargaining in at Ukrainian prices for grains versus the homegrown price of somewhere like in France or Germany. And the taxes and the underhanded tactics of the supermarkets underbidding on everybody and just saying, you know what, take the price. If you don't take the price, then whatever, just get out of our way and we're not going to buy anything. But they're sitting there with thousands of tons of produce, So it just came to a head of globalist, elitist, ivory tower doesn't work in the real world, and people are starting to stand up. And the whole thing about the farmer strike, all those things are going on independently across all the nations in Europe. But the scary thing is they're all uniting under one cause. And see, they don't want the rest of the world to really understand that European farmers are uniting under a single cause. And that scares the elite to let them know that there's a movement across an entire continent where all people of the same mind frame and the same industry are uniting, and they control the food. And since they're stopping the food into the supermarkets, governments are suddenly changing. Have you heard about the governments change so quickly? Oh, the EU bowed in and said they weren't going to do the 2030 tax scheme and the phase out of farm machinery by 2040. We listened to the farmers. Oh, no, you didn't. They were starting to starve the cities enough that they realized in another 4 or 5 days, we are going to have a very serious let them eat cake moment here. So this is what is not being talked about. This is why it's not being publicized, because people coming together under a single unified message of we don't accept it anymore. We don't buy your XYZ op anymore. And we do not abide by any of your indulgent fake taxes that go into an unaccounted fund, which there's no accountability, and it probably goes into somebody's back pocket. Now, this is all happening in unison. So think about how terrified the elite are out there. They're at their very last straw to grasp. Disinformation and misinformation, and that is it. If they can shut down the world communicating, possibly there's a chance to stop the movement. But, humans are ingenious. We have ham radios. There's a dark web. We got all types of things that we can use for broadcast. We can use stations like this. There's a huge amount of things. Oh, and by the way, if you support free speech, please consider a donation to Revolution Radio here for the operating costs and the management. And also, keeping the messaging on air so we can share this. Revolution.radio, head over there. There's many different ways that you can donate to the station. And those of you who like crypto can chip in a little. Give me a coffee nugget over there. There's many a way for the station to continue. That they need funding every month. But you see, Craig, that's the messaging that the elite don't want out. And do you think they can really stop people communicating and talking? I mean, I have a telephone. I can pick it up and call you on Skype. But they can stop the message from coming out on YouTube, maybe. But this disinformation, misinformation year of 2024, how do you think they're going to take it in terms of shutting down these types of conversations?
Well, I think with the farmers right now in Europe, I think one of the things that was learned a couple of years ago is I think there was a farmers sort of like protest or rebellion. Wasn't that in Canada? I think it was a little while ago. But you look at previous times that farmers have protested, and you also look at the Yellow Vest movement in France, and you look at January 6th, the very controversial things of that day. One of the things that I think people have learned is that it's all or nothing. Because if you protest to any great extent, like these farmers that are out there, if you don't win, they're going to come collect you up later. And I think that's something that is still unfolding, sadly, with the January 6th crew. And so either win or, like I say, they'll just, it may take them a while, but, the vengeance of a narcissistic, psychopathic government, well, it's endless. And so it may take them a few years, but they'll get y'all. So you'll be walking to your car and somebody will say, hey, I haven't seen you a long time, and like shake your hand, which is your strong hand, and the next thing you know, someone puts a bag over your head and they toss you in a vehicle and you disappear. So that, I think, is the reality. So what I think the farmers there in Europe have realized is that they've lost hope. So they knew two things. One, we have to go all the way. It's all or nothing. We have to drive to the capitals. We have to shut down the cities. And we have to make our demands extremely clear. We have to, fill their government buildings and supermarkets with wastewater. We got to dig trenches on the highways. We have to go big all the way. I mean, just short of rolling out the guillotines. Instead of guillotines now, I do prefer the slightly more civilized, just like huge mounds of compost, and poop, of course, outright non-composted poop, just surrounding the government buildings. I think that, like I said, they realized they had to do all or nothing. They had to win, or they'd be collected up later. And it looks like they are winning. And I think one of the things that truly inspired this is all the things that you're saying, as well as a loss of hope. I do think what keeps a society functioning underneath a government, whether that government is totally crappy and corrupt or whether it's a good government, is hope. If people believe that their children, their grandchildren will have at least the same world that they did, where there was some ability to function and make a better life for yourself, or at least sustain yourself, then you're going to be somewhat dulcet. You're going to be cool with it. Whether your hope is very small as far as just getting by for your children, for your grandchildren, or whether you see a great future for them in the country that you live in, all it takes is a little hope, and people will be cool. They'll put up with just about anything. But I believe that these farmers had no hope. And that's where the fascist governments, that's where things like the EU, unelected officials, the WEF, the World Economic Forum, etc., all these horrible things, where they screw up is they push too hard and too fast. And the people weren't, I guess, domesticated enough, vaccinated enough, etc., to be passive enough not to care. And the people didn't have hope. The farmers didn't have hope. All of them are out of business. I mean, you look at it, you've got your farmland. I mean, many people who haven't farmed anything, I've only farmed a little bit, farmed a couple of acres professionally for a while. And people may not realize that it's a hard job. I mean, it's not, you have to find people to buy your produce. You're going to be organic, or you're going to be natural, or you're not going to care, except for extremely huge agribusiness. Many small farmers under, like, let's say 20 or 30 or 50 acres, a lot of them don't own all their own equipment. They're in an area where other people are farming and they're sharing equipment. Water is a complete big deal. Do you have it in the ground? Will the government let you use it? Are you irrigating from up in the hills? Are you walking your ditches and turning the gates on and off to get your water? Do you have a pond? Can you pump your water? I mean, there's anyone who's farmed knows it just goes on forever. So it's a full-time job managing your land, and it is hard to, and once you actually have things growing, I mean, you have to realize every year, I mean, some people do collect seed, and that's a good idea, of course, but in many cases you're also buying seed. Let's say that the market wants something you haven't grown before and you don't have seed for it, or you didn't get good seed the previous year or previous years, so then you have to buy seeds. Seeds can be a fortune going into a new growing season. And so these farmers are working hard, and a lot of them just get by. Some do well, and it depends on the year. But you don't see many wealthy farmers, not many, most are middle class at best. So people who don't have a great economic situation, who are working hard as it is, oftentimes it's generations of struggle to make it work, and they have a certain consistency, they're making money. But once that's taken from them and there's no hope, they've been taxed to a point where they can't make money. The land being rewilded. I wish I had the article. I saw something about that where like sort of a version of eminent domain in Europe, where they're about with the rewilding, saying that we need to rewild this land, so we're going to buy your land or take it or something like that. I don't have the article in front of me, but those farmers didn't have hope. And that's, like I say, that's where the empire screws up, because they didn't have hope, but they did have land. In many cases, that was their own, a business that was their own, a family business, that would have been passed down, like where their kids and grandkids might be working it already, and their entire, future of their family, their livelihood, their future generations just got flushed down the toilet for what they know is crap. Like, they know the Greens over there in Europe just want them all dead, so there's a certain cynicism and a certain enlightenment that I see taking place, and it's really one of those things where I can't get too attached to which way it goes. But I see the Farmers' Rebellion as being successful because they knew we're going to have to get in there, shut down a city, get in their face, tell them what they're going to do, and they're going to do it, or else. Or else we will get the damn guillotines out if, surrounding the government buildings and compost doesn't work, and, spraying them with sewage and everything else. All these beautiful creative things that farmers have done to the government buildings. I think it was all or nothing. And I think it even could have come to a situation, and I hope it stays peaceful, but where it's not peaceful in a sense. I believe that actually could take place. And I hope it does stay peaceful, but they're all or nothing. They know they have to win. They're winning. And I hope that's setting the stage for 2024 to be to show the governments what happens when people have their hope taken from them. These farmers have their hope taken from them. And it's, don't mess with a person who has nothing to lose. I mean, you really can. That's like in the art of war. Don't fight a person with nothing to lose. Don't fight a person who's lost their mind. Don't fight, somebody who's fighting for their, children and grandchildren to survive. It just won't work. So I think that the narcissistic, psychopathic, evil governments of Europe, which is what they are at this point, just like ours here in America, who just, the people have completely lost control of the governments, and it didn't just happen. I think that hopefully will be in 2024 the first battle that is won, where the governments realize that when people, far before people are beaten, they will not have hope. They'll know there is no hope unless they, fill the damn government buildings up with sewage and dig trenches in the highways and get in their face and say, you're going to do this, because those farmers show the reality that their voices were not heard, just like no Western civilization, right? Just like no Western country's voice is heard as far as the civilians. And those farmers are badasses. And, I really commend them. I think it's incredible bravery. And, my hope is that we begin to see more intelligent and creative, nonviolent, yet oftentimes extremely disgusting, protesting here in this country. So we really, my hope is that we need our farmers here and the people here to start doing the same thing, because if it hasn't become clear to people, I just don't know how to work with people who don't get it. If it hasn't become clear that it doesn't matter if you know, and it doesn't matter what you maybe write your congressperson, none of that crap matters. I think it's all going to come down to, we're all going to be part of the Farmers Rebellion pretty soon, and when the government of your state, of the federal government, etc., has no choice but do what you say, because you're quite literally in their face. That's when we're going to see a change in the opinion of our state and federal governments. But until then, until we have a farmers rebellion here, we're pretty screwed. We will continue to fund awful wars around this world. The Joe Salente, the guy who writes Trends Journal, he says, when all else fails, they take you to war. And I think that if we don't get a farmers rebellion here, and really a people's rebellion at large, then we're just going to war. And I'm sorry if you're a young person or if you have kids, but they're going to die if you don't join the crowd. But I think that's exactly what it takes to get people freaking crazy enough to peacefully smack the government in the head and say, enough. Like Lindsey Graham, enough of your warmongering nonsense. Just retire. Go away. Everyone's heard enough of your crap. We don't mind that you're a nut and you're a warmonger and you're bought by an evil political. I won't say who it is, but we know who owns them. And anyway, who owns him, but all the same, I'm not endorsing violence or anything. We all know January 6th was kind of a rough thing, but one way or the other, we got to get creative. We got to get creative like the Farmers Rebellion. So anyway, I think if we get creative, I think if people start to lose hope and before they have no ability to actually resist, they get out and they do exactly what was happening there, here, and they continue to do it there. It doesn't take that much of the population just for the government to realize that, their vindictive spite, their malice, their hate, their propaganda, their evil, when ultimately the people are in their face and just say, you're done, shut up. I think that's when you see the world change. So anyway, I hope that we're the shining city on the hill, and I hope that we outdo the Farmers Rebellion. And I think 2024 is getting to be kind of a make or break year for that. So I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. I do. I mean, if you think about it, before this latest Farmers Rebellion happened, did anybody think it was possible? I didn't realize it was going to happen, but it did. You think about, did anybody think that Britain would ever leave India? No. Apartheid would ever end? Nope, not really. Did anybody think that the South Africa would be kicking the French out so they can sell the uranium for what it should cost rather than pennies? Nope. But the world's changing really damn fast. And so, I love the increased cosmic rays brought on by the planetary alignments and the grand solar minimum and the crazy rock and Schumann recently. And I don't know. I'm starting to see society get a little bit crazy. And, I think there's two trains. You got your love train, your fear train. And I think the love train's got more people on it, and they're both leaving in opposite directions from the train station. And I don't know. I'm on a love train. And I think that and we're on the way. The Love Train Farmers Rebellion, we're heading to the White House, and I think it's going to work out. I think it's going to work out. So I'm positive, and that's really I legit am just positive. I see that the empire has run out of lies. And it's a weird saying, but I just think that if it's possible, I just think they've become so bankrupt before the people that they have run out of lies. And I just don't think that their propaganda, malice, spite, hatred, and is going to work anymore. So that's my take on it. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic for 2024. I really am. I see good things happen, and I'm looking forward to the Farmers Rebellion here in this country.
You forgot the Soul Train, baby.
Oh, yeah, I know.
You got the Love Train and the Soul Train connecting at the back there.
Oh yeah, the Love Train, the Soul Train. Yeah, you got the Love Train engine, the Soul Train engine. It's hopped on there. Yeah, we're all hooked up to that one, and we're going in that direction. You've got your Lindsey Graham train. You got your Jake Sullivan. You got your friggin' all those monsters. You got your Victoria Newland. You got your Annalena Barbach. You got all these monsters on the other train. I don't know, that it's a spiral. It's a spiral train track straight back to hell where they came from. Time to go home. You've done enough damage on the airplane. Satan is happy with you. Just spiral back to hell and reap your reward, whatever that might be.
Yeah, it does seem at the end of an empire or the end of a cycle that things are purposely let to self-destruct. Like, we have to get used to a world right now where the substandard is the new normal. And that it's just the way it is. With a lot of people that have departed this realm, we start to see that there's not enough qualified replacement to take over their positions. So the downward spiral is, and again, walk with me on the mind experiment here.
Yes.
Yeah, like when you come to imagine the elite know a new cycle's inbound. Well, would you try to salvage anything? Well, they would. You'd try to extract all the wealth and the resources that you would need to survive through the change, hold that, and then, keep that tight. But the rest of it is disposable, expendable, because it would be anyway. So to just try to keep characters, like you say, the Newlands and the Grahams, et cetera, in place just long enough to keep it, like you guys keep control on the surface of the planet while we hang out underground here and wait for it to finish. I mean, what kind of world is it where the largest market cap on the planet is keeping you sick and keeping perpetual wars moving forward? Like, if those industries had dissolved, sure, there'd be a lot of money lost. But look at our current state of affairs on the planet. I mean, look, how's the world revolving economically? It's all revolving around the war machine, if you will. And also, nothing ever gets better. You're not supposed to get better. If you got better, you got a lost customer. So, on that side of things too, you're looking at these inversions of, a lot of these weapons were supposed to keep us safe, not to go in the offense. They were supposed to be defensive, but now they're offensive. And hey, they're offensive. And every time we blow one off, hey, we need another, $10 million over there, or whatever. Hey, order 1,000 of them. Just tax the people and print the money, whatever. But it seems like we're at the end. Everybody knows there's an end of something here, that the world is not meant to continue forward on its trajectory as it was in, like, you and I growing up, 1980s, 90s. There was the hope. You could see it continuing. There was innovation, but we've reached this stagnation point probably around, 2019, just before COVID hit. And now the only thing we look at in innovation, what's the newest innovations? Things to encapsulate your mind, like, wow, you got the Vision Pro, whatever, something to put you into a metaverse and a non-real, a non-physical universe. Wow, that's a great invention. Zoom improved so you could do online calls so you don't have to be in person with another person. All the innovations that we're seeing are about separating humanity. And, nothing else has really improved. Can you think of any great inventions in the last 5 years? You think about the year 2000, there was always something new, something coming out, improving humanity, making life easier, more exciting, different and better, and reducing time. But now all we see is things that have been invented to separate or destroy humanity. That's it. So you can see we kind of turned a corner there somewhere. And, the governments, the way they're operating inefficiently, not at all, barely. Everything is contracting generally around the planet except for a few nations. And then you look to see, the movement of crop zones would be a good way to put it. But to put that into context, you got to think about the farmers' strike in America. If there was a farmers' rebellion, almost all agribiz in America is controlled by Monsanto, Syngenta, and they're the landowners of the farms themselves and the equipment. And the farms are so large here. That's the huge difference. European farms, generally a 20-acre or under farm is the average size. 5 acres for the locals is a decent size of land to have in Europe. 20-acre farms bordering on the large size. Even in vineyards, families come together and couple their lands, but we don't really have that too much. So each 5-acre or 10-acre or 20-acre owner of a farm in Europe has a tractor. So when you see these tractors all over the roads, that's a combination of thousands and thousands and thousands of these 5, 10, 20, 50-acre owners that are coming together in unison. But here in the States, you got a fleet of tractors on 10,000 or 100,000 acres as a single tract out in the middle of like Kansas somewhere, all controlled by Fortune 500 owned machinery, computer controlled, that can be flicked at a switch to just stop dead on the road. That John Deere did over in the Ukraine when Russia was loading a bit of the equipment on some trains to take it back, and we can use this. John Deere turned it all off remotely.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So what you consider a farmer rebellion in America would be a little more difficult to pull off, just from the sheer magnitude of the size of the farms and the sheer absolute domination and control of Fortune 500 agribusiness on it. Yeah, sure, you might have a few small stakeholders here and there that have smaller farms, but to get it to the level of the European farmer, we'd have to blast back in the past into probably the 1920s or 1930s again, to get that level of number of machines and cooperations and people who had land that was going to be lost. Because, the thing today would be the equivalent here in America is maybe losing your house. Because I encourage everybody, I probably said it 50 times, so I'm going to say it the 51st time. You need to watch the movie The Great Taking. And I don't know, Craig, if you've seen that one, but the blueprinted, scripted plan to confiscate all assets in terms of land and your house is already built into the next banking collapse in terms of a bail-in, not just your funds that are held in savings and checking accounts and safety deposit boxes in the banks, but this will also include all mortgages, lands and homes held in those mortgages bailed into the banks also, where they will take 100% possession. Even if you're a single payment away from paying off your house after 30 years, you will lose it. The bank will own it. This is one of the most important movies ever released, ever. Everybody must watch this movie. You might not understand finance and terms, but by the end of the movie, you'll be familiar enough that they make it easy enough to follow. If you already know some of those terms, by the end of the movie, you're going to be, your skin will be goose skin. Go, oh, that's impossible. They've already done this so well oiled it to steal everything on the planet into the hands of the same dynastic families again. It's a upsetting movie. It's a riveting movie. It's an exciting movie to watch. And I encourage everybody again to really delve into it. And we're coming on the break here in just a minute. So Craig, I'll roll us out. I'd like to talk about that movie. I don't know if you've seen it or not, because, you trade in crypto a bit and, you're pretty familiar with markets. Like, how true do you think that script is, where they could actually bail in all mortgages across the planet, while starting mainly with the United States and Canada, on a bank bail-in, on a catastrophic banking failure?
This is Mysteries in the Histories. On January 23, 1959, 10 hikers set out for a winter hiking and camping trip through Russia's Ural Mountains. One of their group had turned back after several days for medical reasons, but the other 9 continued along with their trip. The 9 hikers' bodies were later found mutilated in complete disarray, radioactive and dead. Most were students or graduates of Ural Polytechnical Institute. The goal of the 14-day expedition was to reach Otorten, a mountain 12 miles north of the site of the incident. This route at that season was estimated as Category 3, the most difficult. All members were experienced in long ski tours and mountain expeditions. However, when the bodies were found, 5 students appeared to have died from hypothermia. The remaining 4 hikers had even more inexplicable injuries. One had a fractured skull, another had a twisted neck. 2 were missing their eyes, and one of the bodies with no eyes was also missing her tongue. The searchers found the abandoned and badly damaged tent on Kolat Shakal. Mihail Sharavin, the student who found the tent, said, "The tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty, and all the group's belongings and shoes had been left behind." Investigators said the tent had been cut open from inside and that skiers had fled in socks or barefoot. A chain of 8 or 9 sets of footprints, left by several people who were wearing socks, a single shoe or barefoot, could be followed and led down towards the edge of nearby woods. At the forest edge, under a large old cedar, the search party found the remains of a fire, along with the first 2 bodies, those of Yuri Krivoshenko and Yuri Doroshenko, shoeless and dressed only in their underwear. The branches on the tree were broken up to 5 meters high. The medical examiner recorded livor mortis on the back, but Krivoshenko was found facing up. This indicated that someone had moved them after their death. On February 27th, between the cedar and the tent, the searchers found Igor Dyatlov and Zenaida Kolmogorova, and 6 days later, on March 5th, Rustem Slobodin. The 3 seemed to have died in poses suggesting that they were attempting to return to the tent. A medical examination found no injuries which might have led to their deaths, and it was concluded that they had died of hypothermia. Slobodin had a small crack in his skull, but it was not thought to be a fatal wound. A legal inquest started immediately after finding the first 5 bodies. Searching for the remaining 4 hikers took more than 2 months. They were finally found on May 5th under 4 meters of snow in a ravine 50 meters farther into the woods from the cedar tree. These 4 were better dressed than the others, and there were signs that those who had died first had apparently relinquished their clothes to the others. Thibaut Brignol was wearing Dubynina's fur coat and hat. Dubynina's was wearing a brown sweater that tested radioactive and was most probably Krivoshenko's. Zolotaryov had Doroshenko's hat, and Kolevatov was wearing Doroshenko's overalls. The waistband of his sweater and lower part of his ski trousers tested radioactive. An examination of the 4 bodies found in May changed the course of the whole investigation. 3 of them had fatal injuries. The body of Thibaut Brignol had major skull damage, and both Dubynina and Zolotaryov had major chest fractures. According to Dr. Boris Vozrojdeny, the force required to cause such damage would have been extremely high. He compared it to the force of a car crash. Notably, the bodies had no external wounds, as if they were crippled by a high level of pressure. Dubynina was found to be missing her tongue. But things were about to get even more bizarre. Bodies were actually found a few feet from their improvised shelter in the deep part of the ravine. Seemingly, something terrified these skiers so much they fled from their campsite. What it was, no one knows. But something possibly violent happened, some say supernatural or out of this world. The Dyatlov Pass incident is still one of the great mysteries in the histories. Brought to you by ITM Trading. ITM Trading has spent the last 28+ years developing a team of expert researchers and gold and silver analysts to make this possible. Simply put, we build strategies which are historically proven to protect your wealth and assets through any economic downturn. Call 866-834-1422. That's 866-834-1422.
And it certainly is the long way to the top when you're trying to achieve global awareness and global messaging. Again, Revolution Radio, if you consider free speech something you want to support, head over to revolution.radio, click that support tab, drop down, see the many different options that you can do. Tip of coffee, tip some crypto, send a check. Everybody likes to keep the operations running because this is, like I say, it's the fight of our lives. We should be 100% in it because we really all have nothing left to lose. If you take it in that greater context, all of us are pushed just like the farmers. They want to take away our right to communicate. They want to take away your access to clean foods. And that was another thing in the farmer protest, was they wanted to reduce and eliminate your access as a person to organic foods. You know, everywhere you look, there's these non-human hominid invasive species that are at the control levels of government and military, but are absolutely doing non-human maneuvers toward us, the people of this planet. Our backs are against the wall just as the farmers are in every way, shape, form, facet. Whether you're going to earn money, it seems like wages are decreasing. Food is getting more and more ridiculously unhealthy. You know, if you look at the packaging, you know, there's a new law that just starts here on March 1st. And if you want to look at the United States Department of Agriculture website, the USDA website, the new food labeling GMO laws come in March 1st here, just in about 2 weeks from now. But companies have already shifted away and started to rebrand it called bioengineered foods. So on the cans, on the boxes, it'll say made with bioengineered ingredients. Now, a few companies took the forward step, and I think they started at the beginning of the year just, you know, making their boxes because they knew they had to here coming up in March. Anyway, you can find it on some previous, if you bought any food within the last 3 months, look on the back of the box or on the can, and it could say used something bioengineered ingredients. And that is a rebranding of GMO because people are becoming aware of GMO. Now, these products that have multiple GMO products overlaid, interlaced with it, whether it be GMO corn, the GMO corn syrup, it might be GM rice, and maybe you'll have a product that has 5 or 6 or 8 bioengineered ingredients in it. They are legally now allowed to put a barcode or a QR code, on the label where you actually have to go into the supermarket with your app and scan it to see what the ingredients are, because they've overlaid so many GM ingredients that it's literally 100% fictitious, non-nutritious food. I'm not going to say nearly non-digestible. I wouldn't say not digestible, nearly non-digestible. To the point where they disguise it with QR codes, which is within the law now. So who has the time to go in and, you know, have the app, and you're a family, you're a mom, and you're running in to buy for your 2 or 3 kids. You're on the clock until the next thing where a kid's got to be dropped off, sent home, something's got to be cooked, you got to clean. You're in a mad dash to get in that supermarket and out. Do you think you'll have the time to scan each QR code and look at the ingredients in there? I don't think so. But Craig, I wanted to throw one thing before you jump back onto, you know, talking about the great taking, you know, and our ability to make money across the planet. It seems like corporations are being put out of business. There's more and more layoffs, even in the tech sector. The amount of manufacturing is just being, you know, smashed to smithereens. And that includes China too. If you think it's bad in America, everything got shifted over to China. So they thought they would have at least 2 generations of never-ending growth in manufacturing like America did after World War II. We had all the 1950s, all the 1960s, all the 1970s, part into the 80s. So we had a good 35 plus years of just nonstop running with the manufacturing to boost our economy. Well, China is already going into mass layoffs in manufacturing because there's really very few orders. And, you know, watching and listening to Jim Willey, he's saying that at the ports across America, there's no goods inbound because normally you would pay treasury bonds at delivery for that, well, instantly convertible to obviously your fiat of choice. But nobody is accepting these treasury bonds as payment for goods delivered. Now, what they're doing is there's a record number of oil tankers in our ports, and they're using physical oil as delivery for payment for the goods. But as it's stacking up right now, across 15 of our major ports in the United States, there's almost zero unloading going on because the payment issues from the U.S. dollar and the blowback of never-ending printing, where those manufacturers do not want to take our treasury bonds in on good for delivery payments. So that puts us into a doom loop there itself. Like, things are going to start drying up across our world here pretty quickly. But on the other side, on the inverse, on the Chinese side, that means they're not manufacturing anything. And the amount of contraction there and the blowback and the complete implosion of Evergrande, which was the largest real estate company, which drove the cement industry, like the sheer amount of concrete needed for the building industry across China was just unbelievable, really, in magnitudes that are so far, multitudes or magnitudes above anything that has ever been consumed in post-World War II Europe or building of our highway system in America. That is literally tenths of a % of usage of some of these projects. The amount of concrete is just, you're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of cities worth of concrete installed in just a decade or so. The dam projects, the works projects, the road projects, the canal projects, the amount of concrete was just staggering. Well, that's all dried up too. So then the onward knocking effects of, okay, there was local concrete manufacturers, but then they were buying a lot of materials from overseas to help in that process. But, everywhere you look, there's a knock on. China ain't manufacturing anymore. They're not constructing like they used to. It was like a flash in the pan. So where does that leave us today? I don't know, man. But I was going somewhere with the thought, Craig, but I forgot. So please jump back in. I've been rambling here. To start the show, round 2. Hour 2. Thanks for joining us, Craig Simpson, right here from Radiant Creators.
Yeah, I think that we're kind of at the end of a debt super cycle, I believe is what it was called in The Great Taking. And there's a great guy, Gregory Mannarino, does a podcast every day. He does 2 a day about the Fed and buying debt and such. And it does seem that so I look at the world right now and I see this, it's been it's been a unipolar world for a long time. And America misbehaved with its, dollar supremacy that was created in the 70s, taking the dollar off the gold standard. And, the dollar is as much of a weapon as any nuclear bomb is, to be honest with you. And I think along with that, you have to look at there's a great book, I think it's called America's the Covert Cold War, or I'll have to look it up. But it's about a regime change, like the secret regime change, it's called something like that. And it's about like 60 some regime changes that America pushed. And I think there was a total of like 70, but like 60 plus of them were covert, like we didn't know about it until after. And that just covers like the Cold War, like 47 to like 91. And so it's not the American people, but just, you could say American empire, American like colonialist thought, basically. We have, and of course you have the Fed. Thomas Jefferson didn't like the Fed at all. He even got rid of it for a short time, but it came back during his presidency. So I think that it is a debt supercycle, and The Great Taking, I think what I kind of got from it, and I watched parts of it all the way through. I didn't watch it, but I watched most of it. And that, ultimately the Fed, I guess you could say, the Federal Reserve, which is not a government agency, it's private. It buys debt, like the whole repo market that we have, so that banks stay solvent overnight. It's a big mess. I mean, the more you learn about it, the more it will keep you up at night. Just realizing how our economy, to a great extent, teeters on disaster, and that's really not something that the working person did, who wipes sweat off their brow and creates whatever they create, does whatever they do to make money. I mean, the American people in general, I think, are more frugal than they're given credit for. I don't think as many people live beyond their means as is accused. And I don't think there's any way around kind of a reckoning for it. I think that's one of the desperations. A great way to buy debt, to print money and pull it into the now, so that you have it. So yeah, this deflationary, so you have this debt super cycle going bust right now, and then one of the ways that you can buy time, maybe even get it under control, is, well, when all else fails, they take you to war. And so you can get away with spending, really ultimately printing endless money. And even though you're devaluing the crap out of the dollar, it gives you this ability, because the people are now scared. They think the bad guys are going to come get us. If you don't fight them over there, you'll fight them here, and all that crap. So I think that our government being so hell bent on starting World War III wherever they can make it happen, and I'll be good because of the censors, but we could name a few places on the planet and be very precise as to where the empire wants World War III. They're insisting on it, and I think that, like I say, that is one of the greatest ways to just print the crap out of money. And we've even heard some of our government officials, and I would say I think it's governors, and I think it could be people in the Senate and the House. Sorry, I forget exactly who, but I've heard it from several, politicians that, like the war in Ukraine is great because we got to give them this $60 billion, because most of that stays here in the country. There's all this weapons manufacturing here, and there's all this, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I have actually heard, maybe others who are listening have as well, the war in Ukraine sold as in, like, we got to get this $60 billion, we got to get this, we got to get this funding, got to print it. It doesn't. That's what they're going to need. They need to print it, so that it can flow back. So it can flow back to states, and of course, a lot of money laundering too comes back to the Congress. But still, war is now, I think, this is the thing about the empire. I think our empire is kind of failing because the leadership is just so dumb. I mean, they actually give it away. We actually have people in our government, saying that it's great. The war in Ukraine is great because think how good it is. It brings jobs to this country. That money, a lot of it, most of it stays right here, and we make stuff, and we make, and that's actually how they sell it. And they say it with a straight face. Like, yeah, we've killed, what is it, like 500,000 casualties, Ukrainians so far. And that's just what we know about. And it's like, I think that like half the damn country has left the Ukraine at this point, which is causing, really refugee crises around Europe. And it's insane. And yet our politicians are like, hey, it's great for business. That money, that $60 billion, that, it's going to go to your state. You got to go sell this because there's this, it'll bring, money and jobs to your state. So, I mean, literally, they're selling war as good business because, and it's a great way to pay off the politicians because, it sends money back to your state. It's good for jobs. So ultimately, you start thinking when the only way that it's not the hard-working American person doing this, but when you look at just the way things have been managed, on like the empire level, the only way they can kind of get the economy rocking, so that they don't lose control because of a economic crash, is to take us to war. It works. We'll see if they pull it off, but it's difficult because what is it, like the BRIC nations, I think, have a greater like GDP ultimately than the G7 at this point or something. So we've been a unipolar world. We've abused it, especially with the dollar, weaponized as much as any nuclear weapon ever was. And now you've got the BRICS, and I think you look at the BRICS that are very happy to watch us kill ourselves. You've got the Ukraine, this great big NATO scrap metal farm, pretty much. I mean, let's send more men and more old equipment and get it blown to crap and kill people because it makes more money here in the U.S. So I think, unfortunately, on a certain level, because of just the as they talk about in the Great Taking, the debt super cycle, and the people who watch it, you realize that we've been controlled by debt and then interest levels, interest rates, etc. So if I call it maybe the empire, you can call it the Fed, whatever you want, the Great Taking, you can decide who and what it is. It can be big money ultimately is what it is. They want to own everything. And yeah, they do buy houses and it is basically a desire to go back to a new, it's like neo-feudalism ultimately. And it is a scary time because their plan is in effect, it's happening, it's working, it's very successful. You've got people that are very happy to scan their palm in Whole Foods rather than just use their card, which it's just fine. Maybe there's no difference, but ultimately I wouldn't do it, and you've got a lot of people who think that 15-minute cities are great. They love it. Central bank digital currency. Oh my heavens! There wouldn't be any more money laundering. And if anybody works in the biz, they know that the aggressive, especially in the EU, aggressive systems that are in place to look for money laundering are friggin' insane as it is. So, the only people money laundering are banks. But anyway, so I don't know. It is a hard moment. But with the Great Taking, one of the things that I would say is I look at the Fed right now is buying debt. It's printing money because that is a great way to be able to print the hell out of money. It's a way to bring money into the States. It does create jobs, but they need war. And, my fear, and I think it is touched on in the Great Taking, is just need a good, the empire needs another 9/11 to get a grip on people again so they can spend the crap out of money and do things like the Patriot Act, which is still around, of course. And it's all about whether they can get it or not. But I do see, like I say, Fed buying debt. They will lower interest rates. I think for the rest of this year, it would not surprise me if we see stocks continue up, if we see commodities probably go up, if we see gold and silver probably at least have somewhat of an uptrend. I think that from what I'm seeing in the market, you watch dollar strength index, it's up and down. But right now it's kind of moving. You can get to another 10-year yield, like 10-year bond yield to 2-year bond yield. I'm a little bad at reading those, but all the same, there are big financial indicators that do show that we're kind of on the way up for a while. That's the thing. If war is good, if we can get a good rockin' World War III going, then, my money's in the market because it's going to pump like crazy. The only problem is that that's where you're going to get your debt super bubble. At that point, the Great Taking comes true. They own everything, and we're screwed. But one of the things I think may hasten all this is commercial real estate. If you look at, if you follow commercial real estate and you listen to some, commentary on it by good financial analysts, people that are successful at being analysts and in business, COVID really did screw things up, and people are working from home, and also the economy is not as good as it was. Companies aren't needing office buildings as much as they once did, and office buildings, ultimately commercial real estate, is taking a real hit and will probably continue in 2024. And that, I think, is one of the things that one should watch for the Great Taking to really go into effect, because one of the things that can just drag the big banks down hardcore would be, and where we'll get our bail-in, where we'll get things happening like the Great Taking sees taking place, is if commercial real estate really does, continue to dump. Some people will say it's not, but if you drive through a city in the evening where the lights are on or off in office buildings, or you go for a walk, get a dog if you don't have one, walk around, you'll note a lot of empty space, and that's costing a lot of money. So I think that commercial real estate, especially if the economy is weak, which it kind of is ultimately, if the only people making money are the people who make bombs and stuff, that's not necessarily going to help everyone it needs to, or the world at large. So watch for commercial real estate dump. Watch for this central bank digital currency push, especially if that happens. And I would just say that, like Joe Salenti says, when all else fails, they take it to war, and they're trying really, really hard. So I'm a little bit worried about that. I'm worried about commercial real estate dumping harder than can be managed, and that taking the banks out quicker than they might like. That might create instability that the empire had not really planned for. And then the next thing I think maybe that's already in place. It's already happening, actually. And they want to get us to war so that they can just, and then realize also that, war being good for business. I mean, that you could say debt buying, that like money printing, that reflects in the GDP. That reflects in the numbers the government wants to show you. So when they say, oh, there's jobs, there was this many jobs. So what are they doing? Oh, well, they're making landmines, and they're, and they're flying drones and stuff. They're making little propellers for drones, they're working in the financial sector, trying to find anybody who's money laundering. Oh, like, you're a teenage kid that cuts your people's, yards in your neighborhood, and you didn't declare that, you did that in cash. Well, you're a terrorist. I mean, so really, we are in an extreme time. So, that's my take on it. Probably no answers there. Like I say, I would watch for the repo market getting more extreme, more money being required to keep the banks afloat overnight. I'd watch for commercial real estate to continue going down. That can definitely, if it happens quick enough, take banks out. Right now you've got, our sanctions go both ways. They're double-edged swords. So in a sense that maybe the collective West wants to sanction the hell out of the world. Everyone. This new European sanctions are coming out. They're pretty much sanctioning everyone now at this point. Also, there's global animosity. America and one of its favorite countries in the Middle East aren't liked very much right now. That does matter. The BRIC nations see America as a problem ultimately, and they're growing as far as a coalition a crap ton quicker than the EU and NATO are. And so we have to watch out for that weakening the dollar. I mean, right now, because of certain events in the Middle East, the weakening of the dollar, getting away from it, has been even hastened all the more by the BRIC nations. I think that the EU is now actually starting to sanction India because I don't know what it is. They believe they're aiding and abetting whatever, not doing what they want. And like, watch out for that one, watch out for India's ire, Anyway, I've been babbling for quite a while, but like I say, commercial real estate, keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the repo market. Watch gold and silver. They're in a slight kind of uptrend, a little bit sideways, but they get a little bit sparky. Bitcoin's doing great recently. It's in an uptrend. I like what I'm seeing. It's just a matter of, I think the Great Taking is really worth watching. I'm going to watch it from the beginning to the end. I only watched parts of it, but it does make a case for something which is very, like you mentioned, person may not know all the terms. You may have to kind of stop and look some of them up. But I could just sum it up as it's a debt super cycle, and when that debt super cycle, kind of like the grand solar minimum, the grand solar minimum, it really sucks. You got magnetic pole wander, you got pole shifts, you got crazy weather, you got all this calamity happening, but also it's a time of enlightenment because of greater cosmic rays. I think at the bottom of a super, debt cycle, it is calamity for humanity for sure, but it's also, good things can happen too. So there are ways to position yourself for this. If you can, get out of debt. If you can, have a little farm like David does, like we're working on doing also. You got your commodities, you got some gold and silver, you got ammo, are you happy, healthy, and wise? Do you train in martial art? Do you do any strength training? Are you working on your health? How's your body, mind, and spirit? Where is it at? This is a time to be, we all have to kind of get in touch with our own inner John Wick. We do. And be an unstoppable force of will And we may not know all the truth, but we know enough. And also, along with what I was saying just now about the debt, look at inflation. Anybody who buys food, who lives on this planet right now, especially here in the U.S., damn well inflation is insane. It's hyperinflation, of course, and I think the economy is hard to even keep a track of because it's hard to even see it or measure it right now. Like Cisco laid off a lot of people, and people may not be familiar with Cisco, but Cisco is the internet. It is technology infrastructure. There's no one bigger. So the internet and companies run on Cisco gear. I mean, that's how our communication takes place. And so I think Cisco having to lay off people, and they've already laid off people before, they run it pretty lean as it is. That definitely means to me like global, business is not growing. We're just, in fact, it's probably declining. People are with their Cisco gear, rather than buying new stuff and keeping it supported, they're just keeping the old stuff and buying an extra switch or an extra router, used cheap. And if something breaks, they just replace it with, the world's changing. So anyway, that's a lot of babble. I hope it did help to some extent, but when all else fails, they take it to war. And I think that the fact that they're trying so hard proves that is the only way to hold up the economy right now and get control of it again. I think that our current Western world leaders are so stupid that they screwed up and they done crashed everything and destroyed it. And so war is the only way to keep their handle on society. And unfortunately, they might need another 9/11 to actually get that grip. So, be ready. Get in touch with that inner John Wick. If you haven't watched it, watch 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 is the best. Get to know the high table, and you're gonna watch that and look around and go, "Holy crap! This is how it really works," and it's right here surrounding me all the time. It's actually a more probably poignant and important movie about how things work, the hidden world that we don't see but exists, than The Matrix was. So get your inner John Wick on. Make ready. So anyway, enough from me.
I want to be paid in the gold coins, man, like the slid gold coins over the counter. I truly believe that's more of a documentary series,
yes,
than it is a fiction film. Just the way it works at the highest levels when you got billionaires and multi-billionaires, like that kind of level of opulence and security, and those who don't want to agree to certain mergers, or those who will disagree on ways to take companies. That's just the way it is. Some things always pay for hire there. Like, how much would you have to protect yourself truly if you had billions running a company that was competing with other billionaires? I mean, at the levels they go to and the private security they need to stop themselves from being in danger, it's just kind of a little over the top ridiculous, where you ask yourself, would you even want to be in that billionaire world? Because there's always a threat, either from the kidnapping or from those that are in competition that want you eliminated. It's just kind of to watch it, especially that first one and the third one. Yeah, the other two I didn't care for, but the documentary is plainly to see in front of you. And once you realize the amount of money and power that these people have that have accumulated, what money does buy the power, and the power buys and creates the money. It's a different way to look at these Fortune 500 companies, or these persons who are above that level that have dynastic wealth. When you're looking into like the black nobility from Italy, or if you're going to swing back over into something more traditional as the Rothschilds, etc. But if you go over and you look at the Venetian nobility, because I visited Venice and I kept seeing the double-headed eagle everywhere, and I delved into the history of Venice. It seems like the cataclysm after, there was a world cataclysm during the Greek, and then subsequently thereafter a very small one at what we consider the ancient Romans, and the surviving nobility class of that still had seafaring trade, had reset themselves up in Venice. And of all things, all the money and the intermarrying of the families and the different nobility families like the Sassoons and different things that have made their list It's just a completely different world of backstabbing. And how long would you really be able to exist in that world? I'm wondering how many in that world are really clones now because they've been removed, but they still need the figure yes head. Because I was looking at this military meeting yesterday, and it had all the generals. They all had their, shoulders pads and all their, badges from this, that, and the other. And it was a mix of different countries all together. And I was just thinking, that is a group of yes men. All I did was look at that. The higher the rank on the uniform was, the more of a yes man that there was in the room. So everybody trusted everybody else in the room because they were all yes men. Like, the only reason they got to that area or that level was because they said yes to every single thing. They never said no even once, no matter what the order was, no matter what the request was. They never said no, not even once. That's how they were trusted in that, arena that they're in, as everybody with that rank and file is totally trustable because they're a yes man. And that is no different than climbing your way up a greasy ladder in corporate 500 America or corporate 500 anywhere world. Yes, men and women move their way up the ladder. They never rock the boat. If you get up to those upper levels, they're always yes, and they never cause a problem. They never rock a boat, and they consistently go along with the agendas of the companies, and they never question. They just yes, yes, yes. And that's another unique thing. So when you come into a group of, let's say, top 100, so we'll use Fortune 500 CEOs, CFOs, COOs. If you get them all into a room, they're all going to be unanimously very similar cut and paste personalities of yes, 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 company, company, company. And that's the profile. And then you look up in the billionaire class, and then you start to see what they have to deal with. But it seems like our world's a scripted world. And the biggest thing that the companies or the news has done for us is they gave us the BRICS currency head fake. Now, is this BRICS currency ever going to really manifest? I don't know if it is. But what they did set up in the head fake of everybody looking for a unified single currency was they set up this interoperable system for sovereign settlement between themselves while nobody was looking. Like, everybody was looking for Brazil, Russia, China, everybody to come in, and now India, and now Saudi Arabia, and who else? There's all these other OPEC nations just joined BRICS too. So there's now BRICS plus 15, I believe it is. So there's 15 additional nations in addition to the original, what is Brazil, China, India, Russia, South Africa. So everybody was looking for a unified currency, like one bill, like $100 BRIC note, for an example, that would come out and be distributed amongst all the nations that are involved in the BRICS, and it could be convertible just like a USDC is convertible. A dollar in the world anywhere is a dollar. But they head faked everybody. The whole time you were distracted and governments were distracted looking for these meetings when they were going to try to create the currency, what they were really doing was creating a system where they could just trade outside the dollar and settle in their own currencies amongst each other. That was the biggest and greatest head fake art of war maneuver ever accomplished. When you look at it in hindsight now, realizing that there will be no BRICS currency, maybe in the future, 20, 30 years from now, but what it did set up was there's far, far, far less usage of the US dollar across the world for settlement, especially even in oil transactions. Because you look at Saddam Hussein, he wanted to start taking euros, and America gave him democracy. That's only from wanting to also accept euros for oil payment, not exclusively 100% only US dollars. And that was enough for our military to go and invade that nation. And Gaddafi, what was his crime? Yeah, he was trying to unite all the Arab nations under a one single currency and also allow those oil nations to trade in different currencies outside the US dollar. Now, we couldn't have a gold-backed dinar or a gold-backed currency that would be a competitor to the US dollar for oil sales. Now, could we? We gave him democracy and friendliness also. Blew up all the water projects. Couldn't use primary water for growing food in the desert. You might give somebody the idea.
Yeah.
And that's just
And
been the routine, again and
uh,
again, copy paste of politics here. And, I'll say one last thing is those waterworks, love Gaddafi, hate the guy, terrorist, not, monster, devil, whatever, label him the way you want to. But one thing that is fact and can be proven is that he laid out one of the world's greatest waterworks project, tapping into the Nubian sandstone aquifer, using the natural pressure from the earth to irrigate hundreds of thousands of acres of test crop plot areas out in what was the driest part of the world's deserts. Now, originally back in the African mega lakes, he did a little research. In the African mega lakes around 6,000 years ago, there was these, low points where the water had pooled. And when it was a massive lake, larger than the Great Lakes in America, the very bottom of that is where he started his projects because A, the water was very close to the surface there. And then B, any natural rainfall would also sluice down to these areas. So he was laying out grids across the entire nation of Libya to pull water from the Nubian sandstone aquifer and irrigate crops, which he was also in project and talks to sell, but also feeding the people. And then, of course, he wanted to create a gold-backed currency that would be available for dollar sales, and that's really what took him out. But we didn't go take out the military and take out the military headquarters. Yeah, we did that with the airports, but then what did we do? We bombed every square inch of the waterworks project, even bombed their fields out there where the crops were growing. That's insane. Like the level of damage done to that country. And, now they have to rebuild if they can these massive waterworks project. There's a huge amount of information on it. Like he was a forward thinker in terms of trying to take unusable land. And another thing I think spooked a lot of industrialists, for a better term, was understanding the vast amount of water resources beneath Africa. Like you got the Sousse aquifer out near Morocco, and then you got the Nubian sandstone aquifer, which encompasses Libya and Egypt over there. I mean, just that one that's under Libya and Egypt has 4,000 cubic kilometers of water in it. And the one out in the Sousse aquifer was something like 12,000 cubic kilometers of water. But then you go down in the central regions further south around Chad, and shall I say it, our uranium mining friends in Niger or Niger?
yes.
Yeah. Now we're talking about that becomes a new growing zone, a new arable land zone. All you need is the investment and the machinery, and boom, you're rivaling the United States or Canada or Australia or anywhere on the planet with the amount of food that could be grown in the non-usable area, bringing wealth back into these same nations again. But no, we couldn't let that happen. We need to bomb the waterworks projects.
It's amazing how vindictive it gets. And Gaddafi also, I believe also one of the reasons he was gone after is that he was, kind of an early visionary of the BRIC nations, the idea of BRICS. And I think he did an amazing talk at the UN where usually they only get a short time to talk, but he got up in front of the UN, and it's on the internet. You can find it. It's like 2 hours. He just went on about how the UN could be useful, but it is not, how it's only a tool of empire, of Western empire. And he was saying that as long as there's a UN Security Council, like 6 nations that can veto anything, that all the other nations in the world that are members of the UN are just a fake legitimacy, because none of their voices matter. And so he really was like, there should be a UN. It is a good thing, but we have to do away with the UN Security Council. Like, how can the Western nations say they believe in democracy when ultimately the UN is a dictatorship of 6 nations? And a fake legitimacy of having all these member states that have absolutely no say. It's really crazy. So yeah, Gaddafi was a badass. The person may like him or not like him, but that man, he stirred shit up, and well, he experienced freedom. And
Well, no, you got to think about Even today, the Security Council members, one single vote can derail the other 6, which we saw happen just recently. Wink, wink.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's the thing. I think we're seeing a lot of beautiful, amazing global instability. Where I would say I see a lot of craziness, but I think it's all. I think it's good, because there's a legal term, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what it is. Somebody I know who was a lawyer was telling me how, and I'll be like, wink, wink, right? So you cannot, as the collective West, that's really the America has done, you cannot use the UN. You cannot use the ICC, International Court of Criminal, whatever it is, and the ICJ, International Court of Criminal Justice, right? You cannot use that court, as in you cannot, like, take a ruling from that court and say, see, look, this is valid. And then, when it rules the way you do not like, say, it's not valid. So it's a legal term. And it's like a legal precedence where, so in a sense, America's kind of in trouble for something like wink, wink, in that you cannot say the ICJ, or was it the ICC, I forget which one, based on, a presentation by South Africa, said that, hey, something bad is happening. Basically, either the court is valid, which America has already stated that it is and should be listened to. Now you cannot say it is not valid. It's not that court necessarily has any power, and it's been a tool of empire just plenty, but the world's falling apart, and I love it. Like you talk about yes men, you've got the Bakhmut butcher, or the butcher of Bakhmut. I think it's Alexander Sersky, I forget the guy, the head general that he was liked in the Ukraine. He got replaced because. So now there's this new guy. They actually call him the Butcher of Bakhmut because he's so willing to kill his soldiers. But they need people, anyone they can get off the street, just to be in the way to try to keep this war going over there. And so they actually have this guy who is a known yes man. Like, hey, we need you just to throw bodies at the onslaught because we need this. We just need to buy time because maybe we can figure a way to keep this going. Make something happen in our favor. And yes, man, I couldn't help but think of Lloyd Austin, our Secretary of Defense, I think, right now. And if you've ever watched a movie, Mars Attacks, you're going to see Lloyd Austin in that movie. You'll recognize who I'm talking about. And he actually says, I knew everything would work out for me if I just kept my head down and agreed to everything. So, yeah, I mean, if you are a member of the high table, it's a dangerous game. And even those who are under the table, who might think they're high table, it's a very, very dangerous game. And what you mentioned with John Wick using the coin, I think that was actually very, very true. If you look at John Wick, you've got the amazing kind of underground retro equipment they have, the people who manage contracts and stuff. It's these strange tattooed ladies and all this old retro computers and stamps and stuff. It really reminds me kind of Empire. It's this old ancient thing. And the way all their commerce is done, which is sliding a gold, no matter what it is, like whether you're buying a dozen guns or a hotel for the night at the Continental, you just slide your gold coin and that covers it. A very unique, I think, kind of futuristic view of how the elite do commerce, and it's kind of letting us know that, hey, gold is, maybe you might want to stack a couple gold coins or some silver coins because that's how the people that no one is actually looking at for money laundering, I think maybe they do just slide gold coins across the counter and no one ever knows it happens. So anyway, long story, but yeah, I also thought I would mention that book. When it comes to a lot of things that is happening in the world right now, there's a book called Covert Regime Change. Yeah, America's Secret Cold War. It's amazing, and it breaks down all the covert regime changes we've done around the world just during the Cold War, and they've only increased since then. And it just came out on Audible, I'm happy to say. So if you're a listener, it's on Audible too. But amazing scholarly work, and you start realizing that when you do watch the Great Taking, like a great weekend would be like watch The Matrix, watch all the John Wick movies, like listen to regime, like covert regime change while you're like cleaning the garage or cleaning guns or whatever, cleaning the kitchen, putting some shelves up, and just I don't know. I think the more real we can get, I think the better, because it's great. It's great to chat, because I think that those who have a certain awareness right now, an awareness, a spiritual awareness, a conscious awareness, I think are going to do fine, because if you know the high table exists, you also know that fortitude, that strength of will, like a John Wick, exists as well, and that you can be that. And I thought I'd mention something that maybe people might find useful. This is a crazy. I know I should keep it factual, but I wanted to mention this. I had an amazing dream that I think may actually be of use to people, and you can tell me what you think. So if you notice right now, if you're a person who likes to watch, summaries of things, like there's lots and lots of Bigfoot and rake sightings, and like dogmen and UFOs, and there's a lot more of that, and also a lot more paranormal seems to be going on. People seeing shadow people, people who are saying, I think I changed timelines, or I drove down the street and there was a building there that I've never seen before, and they couldn't have built it overnight. Reality is loosening up right now, and so with that, maybe people have noticed that, maybe not, but I certainly have, and crazy people that I know have noticed it. But how about this one? So I had this dream, and I've been doing some study on demons and angels, and them being like plasma beings, and it's quite a new study, but it does seem that there's really actual, when we look at plasma physics, there's quite the case to be made for plasma beings that are angels and demons that have existed, and even some of the early church father writings actually kind of are written. We're realizing, my God, they're talking about plasma beings. So here's the deal. I had a dream, and all these angry people were walking kind of, not towards me, but kind of diagonally, kind of crossing my path. And I was kind of glad, because there's all these people, this huge crowd, dispersed, like various peoples, all kinds of people. And they were all really angry, and they looked violent, kind of scary. And I thought, man, this is really disturbing. And so I kind of walked in that crowd, and I was going the opposite direction, and I was looking around, trying to what was with these zombie angry people. They seemed very menacing, and they all were very deliberate. And I started to see it was as if ink was dripped in water. Everyone's saying ink dropped in water, how it disperses, that neat pattern. And I was seeing these. It was as if ink had been dropped amongst them, and there was these big clouds of, as if it was ink and water, and I could feel that these were demons. Crazy, huh? And it was a nightmare. Ended up waking up shortly after that, but I realized that in this time of grand solar minimum, in this time of change, of the great taking, of the farmers' rebellion, of an awareness, an awakening of humanity, the soul and the love train hitched together, taken off. You got your Lindsey Graham train, and going the other way, the military-industrial complex train going the other way. There's angels and demons on the planet, and it made me realize that just like you had the Incas back in the day cutting a heart out and trying to offer it to the gods, but it was just a dark plasma demon over that temple, and it was drinking the life from the blood. They were actually feeding an entity, and some countries kind of have that entity over them right now. But with that said, it made me realize people. I feel like so many people are more NPC'd out, are more mind controlled, are more biased, are more just so radical, unable to think, rational thoughts gone. They're just so happy they're not innocent. They're just willing to just live the most mundane biases. They refuse to think because they've been taken by demons. And so anyway, it's a great book by Joseph Farrell that I've got that just came out, and I'll mention it
later.
Wait,
Craig, can I throw an idea there?
Actually, good, because I could just round it up and say, there you go. I've been studying this, and I think I saw it in a dream, and I think it was real, and I feel it. So yeah, throw something in there.
Well, you have to think about the rollout of these 5G towers that have accompanied us since probably 2019, following this complacency. So you have to wonder if it's frequency being pumped into the human that's causing that reaction or output of the human. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely could be. I mean, could we be? It could be feeding the demons. It could be making a nice environment for them, or it could be, part of the control. Like, could that, it felt like very icky, very dark. It felt like, as if ink had been dropped in water, and it was floating amongst the people, and it had an effect on them, and it had made them very. I'm just going to say angry. They were manipulated. They were no longer themselves. That's for sure. And it felt like demonic possession. But what you're saying, though, it's true with the rollout of 5G, of, I guess, 6G now, of that technology being more and more refined and probably improved and upgraded more than we know, And, of course, the body, through certain means, being more susceptible, like having antennas installed in it, sort of, that can better receive that signal. Yeah. I mean, it could be exactly that as well. I mean, but I just wonder what people think out there, if they've noticed that, they probably have, but I mean, have they noticed that people are not themselves, and it seems like they are being, like, quite literally controlled, by, I'll call it like demonic forces, but, we know about egregores, we know about, possession, et cetera, but whether it's man-made, like 5G possession, or whether it's like a spiritual, like plasma being, it was something that I've kind of been thinking about, and I had, like I say, one of those dreams that we have in life where it was so damn real. I was like, it was showing me something that I needed to see, so I thought I'd just mention it here, because it was pretty damn profound. And I think that while we're out there, while we're prepping, while we're working on wisdom, while we're truth seeking, just realize that there is a manipulated crowd of people out there that ain't got nothing to do with you and may not have your best interest in mind. So just be careful. Don't just be careful. It might be why the Farmers Rebellion was so damn hardcore, because they know that they are fighting. I think maybe they see the enemy very, very clearly. Maybe they saw what I saw, and they became aware of it and realized that there's no bargaining with it.
Yeah, let me see if I can interpret your dream a second for you here.
Yeah.
Now, perhaps each person represented a portal that was opened and not closed. So you mentioned Ouija boards. A lot of people play with that, but they don't realize they need to close the portal after they're done playing with it. So think about those not as people, but as open portals that were opened and never closed because a novice using magic had opened it and either gotten taken over by the demon or was just left open and pouring through. And that's why you saw that inky stuff, because that's portals that are open. So each one of those represented an open portal through the last 150, 200, 500 years still on our planet. Must be tens of thousands or millions of open portals through, places where there were tragedies that happened, places that people actually invoke magic, but ley lines, or different places that they just played in the basement. Somebody, went way overboard and put some blood down there in a circle and then played the Ouija board. And then suddenly they couldn't close it. They got too scared, ran out of there and never went back to the house. And that place is open. And then, one of those people you might think was a person is now inhabiting that space. So, I'm looking at it from a different way of novice magicians that didn't realize that they need to invoke the archangels to close those portals back up.
Yeah, that would make sense. Definitely. And at a time like we have now, where there's more cosmic rays coming in, where we have this, let's say magnetic pole wander, where you have the planet's magnetosphere being weaker. I mean, that's maybe a time where those portals can become even more pronounced.
Yeah, I'm wondering, because low solar activity, there's a lot of changes physiologically on our brains that happen too, and people born into these times have extended lifetimes. as well when they're born into low magnetic fields. So there's definitely science behind physical changes in the human, from high solar activity to low solar activity on the regular 11-year cycle. But think about those people born in the Maunder minimum at no sunspots for decades. Like, those people probably lived to be 150 years old. And then the wars came in and wiped them all out. So they wouldn't be 150. Only the elite could hold on to that power. So they just got a free birthing channel to allow their clan to live to 150 years old during zero sunspots for a decade or so. A bit woo-woo to bring us out again. Revolution Radio, thanks for letting us broadcast. And all of you out there, revolution.radio, consider a donation. Keep the channel on air here so we can bring you more information like this next week. Craig Simpson, David DuByne signing off. Bye for now.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you for listening to Revolution